Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. We have a journalism student in training in the house, and she wants to see what it's like to interview people. Her name is Annabel Hofmann. Welcome, Annabel.
Thank you for having me.
So where do you go to school?
I go to school at Hofstra University. It's on Long Island.
And where are you from?
I'm from around here. I'm from Salisbury, Maryland. I was actually born in Michigan, but then we moved here when I was super young, so I consider myself from here.
And you graduated from James and Bennett.
I did, indeed. Class of 2019.
Both of your parents are doctors, so why do you want to be in the journalism business?
I think my parents were kind of hoping I'd follow them along, but they always say that they'll support me no matter what. So I had this little joke with my dad before I went to college that I was going to be a National Geographic photographer. And he kind of jokingly was like, "Oh no, go get a real job." Like, ha ha ha. So I started as a chemistry major, thought that I was going to solve climate change, make a huge difference in the world. Then I realized that chemistry is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of math involved. And I also just realized that I didn't actually like being in the lab. That's supposed to be the most fun part, the part that everyone actually enjoys, and I just didn't like it. So then I went back to my original plan of being a National Geographic photographer, and I switched to the journalism department, and I absolutely love it.
Do you take photos?
I do. I really enjoy it. I do it on vacation just for fun and then send them out to the family. And then I actually took a photojournalism class, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, years ago I was a mate on a marlin boat, and we were going out to shoot a shipwreck picture, go visit a shipwreck. And they had a National Geographic photographer on the boat. And I was like 14. I'd never seen a National Geographic photographer before. And it was back when National Geographic was the big thing. That and Life magazine were the big, photographic magazines. And a seaplane landed to meet us there. And he took a whole roll of film, like of this seaplane landing. And, when I had a camera, I would just take one or two pictures because I couldn't afford to get them all developed. And I was like, wow, if I could be a professional photographer, I could take a whole roll of film of just one picture. But it was just amazing what, how their stature was and what being a National Geographic photographer meant.
That's so funny because we actually got to use film cameras in my class, and that was just a totally different experience. Like, even something simple, I wanted to take a picture of a squirrel, and I had to focus it, change all this, change that, and then by the time I went to take the picture, the squirrel was gone, and it just made me appreciate how far really advancements in cameras and technology has come. It was crazy.
The first cameras they gave me to use at the paper that was owned by the paper, they didn't even have light meters. We had to carry a portable light meter and hold it up and get the readings and set the aperture and the f-stop and all that stuff because it didn't have light meters in the camera. So just imagine that.
I can't even imagine. I take 500 pictures of a tree. And my mom's like, "What are you doing?"
So to be a reporter, and I don't usually use the word journalist. I say report. I'm a newspaper reporter or a reporter. You really have to be interested in people. Do you have that skill?
I do. I really like hearing other people's stories. One of the big things that I've always thought would be really cool is telling other people's stories. And what made me realize this is we were on vacation in Costa Rica, and we went on a walking guided tour. And the tour guide, he had originally been a hunter, and then he kind of transitioned into tour guiding. So he was able to track these animals super, super well. And I just thought that was someone's story that was incredible, that no one really understands or appreciates, and I wanted to be able to share it. So that is one of the things I'd hope to be able to do through journalism.
Right. Now, Annabel was with me today. We went to a county council meeting in which U.S. Senator Ben Cardin was on a Zoom call. And the council members talked to him about what they need from the federal government in terms of funding. So it was a wide-ranging discussion. But your challenge now, and she's going to write the story for us for the Salisbury Independent, your challenge is going to be figuring out what's important and what's not important in what was kind of a fairly interesting discussion.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to look back at my notes because you're kind of in there and you're a bit overwhelmed. You're like, these are all the people leading my county, stay calm.
Right.
So I might have blacked out a little bit there.
Right.
But I'm excited to go back and see. I know there was a lot of discussion about water infrastructure, which I know is a big thing for Ben Cardin, Senator Ben Cardin. And then this Pirates Wharf access to the bay. I think that's going to be an interesting topic to look more into. So I'm excited to write it. A little nervous, but excited.
There's so much stuff you get, but you can't tell everybody everything. So it's like, when you get home for dinner and your family says, "So what did you do today?" You have to select certain things that are the most interesting to relay. And it's the same thing with the readers, selecting what they really need to know or want to know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. You also have to be very curious. Are you a curious person?
Mm-hmm. I think that's what drew me to science in the beginning, was you do kind of have to investigate and answer questions. But I'm even more intrigued about doing it through asking people questions and through kind of investigating and hearing more about what people have to say. So
Excellent. It's a difficult time to be a journalist. There's not a lot of people going into that business now because it's at a precipice in terms of what the direction is going to be, where we're giving up on the print product and going into the digital world. There's still a niche for the print product in our community, which makes my paper successful, which is great. But the focus is on digital. So what are your thoughts about the print versus digital?
I'd say the nice thing about digital is it can be constantly updated. Like you see a lot of reporters using Twitter and all these social medias, and it is able to be constant notifications and constant updates. But there's something great about just sitting in the morning, opening the newspaper, and drinking your cup of coffee. So I do think a little bit will be lost if we really steer away from solely print. But there is a lot that online can offer, and our classes do a good job of trying to prepare us for, hey, by the way, you're going to have to learn how to make a website. You're going to have to learn how to create a post on a website. So I feel like I'm prepared, but it will be a bit sad if we lose print entirely.
So what are the classes teaching up there? What do they focus on?
There's a wide range of stuff, and it's really cool because you can kind of pick which individual electives you want to take besides the regular coursework. So I'm taking one called Visual and Design. So I think it's going to be about designing a newspaper, designing a website. I also took one just solely about magazine production, which was super interesting because we created a magazine from scratch. So we came up with the topic, the title, we designed every single page, which was really interesting because I didn't know how much really went into a magazine. I'm a bit sad though because magazines are definitely kind of losing their popularity, as you said about National Geographic and Life. But we learned a lot of different wide variety of skills, which is awesome.
Now, you would perhaps like to, so many reporters like doctors specialize in different topics. So I'm trained, I have to be able to write a sewer story in the morning and a police story in the afternoon and cover a governmental meeting at night. So I have to, and then go write a feature story about a farmer on the weekend. So I've got to be able, I have to know a little bit about a lot of things. But you would like to specialize in environmental reporting.
That's what I'm thinking so far. I've written a couple stories about agriculture on Long Island because it's a huge sector. And then climate change, there's a whole bunch of marsh and bays. It's actually very similar to the Eastern Shore, I've discovered. And I just find myself drawn to those stories. I love talking to the nonprofits that are working to get some of these initiatives passed. I love hearing what the county and the governments have planned for their efforts. And I just think it's really interesting and super important topic, especially now.
Right. And I've told you we have key topics that that your newspaper has to include certain things all the time. And one of those things is growth and development. Our readers really care about that. And it was interesting in that county meeting today, so many of their issues are growth and development, whether it's about developing the airport, growing with housing, some questions about crime came up. So you're going to be well positioned to write about the most important things in the community.
I'm excited. I came to shadow you on the perfect day.
Yeah.
I didn't know so much was going on in Salisbury.
So you're a senior, you're going to graduate this year. What are you going to do after you graduate?
I'm very interested in joining the Peace Corps.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the most interesting parts about my life, I think, is my parents were doing kind of a medical mission, so similar to Doctors Without Borders, but it was called Concern America, in Bolivia when I was 4 years old, and we lived there for 2 years. And I don't have that many memories from it, but I do know I'm just so happy that they did that because I think it's changed how I see the world completely. And we've been back a couple times, and I've gotten to see my babysitter, and then one of our best friends. She calls us every Christmas to say hi. But I just wish I remembered that experience more. So I want to be able to do something like that for myself. And I speak pretty good Spanish.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I want to try and I hope that 2 years immersed in a Spanish-speaking country, I'll come out pretty fluent.
Right, and as a reporter, if you're bilingual, it's a tremendous asset in terms of interviewing people.
Yeah, my mom talks about this all the time. She's a pediatric hospitalist, and she'll have a lot of people come in that speak Spanish or Haitian.
Right.
And she can tell that the Spanish-speaking patients really appreciate when she can interact with them directly, whereas with the Haitian patients, she has to call in the language line.
Right.
And she doesn't get quite the same connection. So I'm sure it's the same with journalism.
That's incredible. Where would you like to be posted in the Peace Corps?
I'm looking at an English teaching volunteer in Colombia, maybe.
Okay.
I also briefly considered a community health outreach. Kind of you teach the locals about what's important about health. But I don't have any experience with health besides my parents being doctors, which makes me think I'm a doctor.
Right.
But I'm not. So I don't think I'm quite as qualified for that one as opposed to teaching English. I spend every day working with the English language. And both my roommates are internationals, so I kind of have to help them every day with learning English, so I feel like that would be a really good fit.
That's amazing. Is it still a 2-year commitment? Mm-hmm. Okay.
You can also do a 12-month one, but I figured if I'm going for it, I'm going for it.
Yeah, when you come back, you're going to be, completely changed, and
I hope so.
It'll be even more dynamic. I want to talk about social media. How so many people get their news off social media now, and it's kind of flawed in my opinion. Where do you get your news?
I have I don't unfortunately get the print papers, but I do have the apps. So I actually read the newspapers. I have Twitter, but I do see what you're saying. When you go on Twitter, it's very pigeonholed because once you like something, the algorithm brings up something that's very similar. So during the World Cup, I was liking a lot of World Cup posts, and now my whole Twitter is soccer.
Right.
So while it is a good source because it's easy, it's accessible, everyone has it pretty much, I do think there's a bit of a problem in, what kind of content you're accessing.
Well, Annabel Hofmann, we're so thrilled that you're in our community, and we're glad you spent some time with us today. Thank you so much for all you do, and good luck with the Peace Corps and everything, and graduating this year.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
Welcome to another edition of One on One. I'm Annabel Hofmann. I'm filling in for Greg Bassett, who I've heard is laying on a beach somewhere. I'm here today. I'm a recent Bennett grad, and I'm here today with Gino Bailey, who is the new director of Rock and Roll Revival.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for being here with us. So I know you have a background in music. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Sure. I started playing music back in elementary school or middle school. Just like most kids in high school and middle school. My band director back then was Brent Rollins. He was kind of one of the guys who really inspired me to pursue music as a career. So I went through middle school playing in all the stage bands and high school, and in the high school marching bands and stuff like that, and eventually got into the entertainment business, actually working at Frontier Town in Ocean City. I worked there from, I guess, about 1983 to 94, and kind of got the entertainment bug. I enjoyed entertaining people and being in front of people, and also helping other people figure that process out also. I ended up being the manager at Frontier Town the last few years I was there. Went on into college to be a band director. I wanted to be a marching band director. But about halfway through that process, I picked up the bass guitar and got in a band and started playing music for a living, and I played in a group called Blue Junction, which was like a 3-piece power trio blues band, and we toured the Mid-Atlantic and that sort of thing. About my 5th year into playing music for a living, I recorded my first album, and it happened to be at Mid-South Audio. And they kind of liked my work ethic there in the recording studio, so Kevin Short, the owner of Mid-South, offered me a job, and I've been there ever since.
And I understand you've done the sound work for some pretty big artists. Could you tell me a little bit?
Yeah, working with Mid-South Audio really has been a great experience. Not only with educating myself with the recording process in the recording studio, but also we expanded the business and we started doing live concerts in the late 90s. And really it gave me some opportunities working with the Rehoboth Jazz Festival, work with artists like The Temptations, B.B. King, Dionne Warwick, many of the artists that this interview is supposed to be about Rock and Roll Revival, and it's really about working with many of the artists. I've worked with several of the artists that were actually doing the songs in the show.
That's awesome. It kind of gives you a personal connection with the show.
Absolutely. So then Rock and Roll Revival came to Mid-South Audio 22 years ago. It was, I believe, the 2nd or the 3rd year of the show. I believe Meg Showman was the original director, and then Larry and Christy Worston took it over. Larry realized that the show was bigger than what he could handle audio production-wise, so he came to Mid-South and asked for some help. So I started working with him then.
So you've been involved almost since the beginning?
Almost since the beginning. It was the 3rd year of the production.
And what's motivated you to take over as director instead?
It's my favorite gig of the year. It really is, because it kind of recharges my batteries. Working with these kids and how excited they are about putting on this production. It's a huge production, And so, you know, I used to go back home after every rehearsal and talk to my wife about it, and we really liked, wanted to do something more.
Wanted to get more involved.
Wanted to get more involved, and back then it was Larry and Christie's show at that point, but we wanted to do something ourselves. So we kind of took the idea of Rock and Roll Revival and created AMP Studio here in Salisbury, the Academy of Music Performance.
Could you tell me a little bit more about that, please?
Which it's very similar. It's basically a mini Rock and Roll Revival for kids, you know, not just at James M. Bennett High School, but for all over the shore. So, but so my kids came up through the program there at James M. Bennett. Rachel Bailey.
I went to high school with her. Yep.
Yeah, and then her older sister Lauren Bailey was part of it, and also part of Rock and Roll Revival. She was a flute player. Rachel was a keyboard player and a singer, and so we've always kind of had our eye on Rock and Roll Revival. That, you know, if they needed us, or, you know, the opportunity came, that we would love to be the directors.
As you mentioned, it's a huge production. I've gone almost every year. Is there a way to quantify kind of how large it is, how many students are involved, or anything like that?
Sure. In years past, the cast has been as large as about 140 kids in the cast. That includes singers, musicians, dancers, set construction, you know, people, backstage people. This year, I think we're just at about 100 kids are involved in the show this year. So it's a professional production since the beginning, and as the show has grown, what Mid-South Audio has provided for the show has also grown. The PA is a professional PA. It's literally the same PA that's been used by many national artists all over the East Coast, you know. So the production is very professional. It's all professional equipment, the wireless microphones. We expect the professionalism from the kids. We expect nothing less than the professionalism from the kids, because it's not just a high school fundraiser. It's I treat it like a professional production, and I expect that from the kids also.
You can really tell when you watch it, for sure.
Yeah.
So I know this year's theme is the power of love. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, one of my wife's favorite bands is Huey Lewis, and for years I've always opened the show with the Heart of Rock and Roll, which kind of sums up what the show's about. You know, it's about it's music that has to be at least 20 years old, going back into the late 50s. It's a directing team. It's not just me. It's my wife, my two daughters, and myself. So she had the idea using the power of love, which I certainly didn't want to take that from her. And for years I've always opened the show with the Heart of Rock and Roll, which is a Huey Lewis song, which kind of sums up the whole idea of rock and roll. Songs in Rock and Roll Revival actually have to be 20 years old. That's the only qualification. And so we have songs in the show going back to the late 50s all the way up to the early 2000s.
That's awesome. Is there any song you're particularly excited for?
One of my favorite songs in the show is a song called The Things We Do for Love. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's not an easy song. There's a lot of chords in it, and it's a fairly difficult song. It's very challenging for the vocalist.
And what are the details of this year's Rock and Roll Revival? Can you tell us when and where?
Sure, it'll be held at James M. Bennett Auditorium. It's the first two, or I believe it's actually the second and third weekend of February. The 10th through the 12th, which is a Thursday through Sunday, and then the following week, I believe it's Friday through Sunday also. There's also a matinee on that first Saturday. I believe we're doing 2 shows on that Saturday.
And how would you get a ticket if you were interested?
You could contact, it's all done online with Eventbrite. You just punch in Rock and Roll Revival 2023, and I think I believe you'll find your way there.
Those technological savvy people can.
Right. And if you have any questions, there's also on our Facebook page, the James M. Bennett Facebook page, there's instructions there step by step how to get to that.
And is there anything you want to say to a student who might be interested in joining?
Sure. Everybody's welcome. Everybody is absolutely welcome. That's one of the greatest things I find about the show, is that it brings so many kids from different points of life, and it brings them together, and they realize that they're working on a team, and they have to depend on each other, and people depend on them. You know, I kind of call it life lessons through music. As a musician, a lot of times you find yourself in the bedroom, playing your guitar, staring at a mirror by yourself, and you kind of end up losing interest. And this is a great way to just expand on what those kids already know, or those kids that have taken voice lessons. Even if you haven't taken voice lessons, come in and be a part of it. If you want to be a part of, if you're thinking about a career in the stuff that I do, sound engineer, lighting, staging, construction, any of that stuff, I encourage all the kids to come out and be a part of that.
Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to be a part of it, but I can imagine there's some funny outtakes or kind of funny mess ups. Can you think of a story or anything?
Oh, absolutely. Years ago, in one of the rehearsals, we were doing the song Fame from the movie Fame. I Want to Live Forever was the song, I believe. And Dick Morse, who was our guitar tech at the time, and Alex Werson, which is Larry and Christy's son, were helping out and being a part of it. Dick Morse's daughter was singing the song. And of course, if you know that song, it's kind of like it's in a dance studio, or it's almost like an aerobic studio, and they're all like this. Well, Alex and Dick came out in headbands and spandex, and they knew the whole dance, and they ended up going through the whole rehearsal, of that song, and it was just a blast. There's all kinds of things like that happen, though.
I'm sure it's awesome seeing the behind the scenes of it that no one really gets to see.
It is. It's great. It's a huge event. It made such an impact on my kids being part of it. My daughter's now a professional musician. It kind of gave her, a sense that she could do that. So she's a singer-songwriter, and that's what she does. Is she gives voice lessons and goes out and performs every week.
Can you tell us the details of the show, the where and the when?
Sure. It'll be taking place at James and Bennett Auditorium. It'll be happening Friday through Sunday, the first week, February 10th through the 12th. That first Saturday, we'll also be having a matinee show. I believe it starts at 1 or 2, but you want to check on that. And then the following week, we have shows Thursday through Sunday, the 16th through the 19th. And that is on that Saturday, it's just a single show.
I know one of the most famous names from Rock and Roll Revival probably has to be Jeremiah Copeland.
Yes.
On American Idol.
Yes.
Did you know him at all?
Absolutely. I worked with him as a freshman all the way through high school. And it was funny. His first show, we had gone through rehearsals and everything. I knew he was special then. We all knew he was special then. He just has this spark in his eye, that you can see. And he's just such a great kid. So in years past, we have had talent agents come and try and scout kids. And I knew that I walked out in the lobby and I saw the guy out in the lobby. And so I walked back in, and his mother was sitting in the seat in the auditorium by herself. And I walked up to her and I said, "Look, you're going to be approached by somebody here." And sure enough, he went in, he saw Jeremiah that year sang Summertime. And sure enough, at the intermission, the talent agent was right there by his mother, trying to scoop him up, So there's a few stories like that, We've had a lot of great kids come out of Rock and Roll Revival, whether go on to be in the news and news spokespeople. One of my favorite people is Jackson Desjardins, who's gone on to be a motivational speaker, and he's really, really a great kid. He's very positive, and I could go on and on about the kids that come out of their shell with Rock and Roll Revival. A lot of times they come in as freshmen, and they can barely get them to talk, and by the time they're seniors, they want to be front and center with that mic, having their own song. So it's a great thing to watch.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's got to be awesome for you to be able to see these students grow.
Absolutely, and just to be a part of it, just to have a little part of it. That's why we do what we do.
That's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about why it's important to buy your tickets ahead of time?
Sure. The tickets are only going to be available on Eventbrite. So there will be, though, if there is tickets at the door, it will be because they've been turned in. But the chances are there will be no tickets at the door. Everything's going to be done on Eventbrite.
What's different about this year's show as compared to previous years?
What I brought to the table was just this, the sense of, I've been able to work on some large stages and, bring in some aspects of very large productions into what is essentially a high school production. The large PA. We have a 40-inch mirror ball kind of drops down in the middle of the show this year. So on the production side, that's what I bring. But every year it's just full of surprises. So it's always different. It's always changing and evolving.
And I think she mentioned that it was a 2-act show?
It is. It is a 2-act show. This year, we are at full capacity, or there are no COVID restrictions. So we will be, I believe it's 802 seats in the auditorium, and in years past, we've sold 800. So every show. So it's, you get your tickets early, because it is assigned seating. So you don't have to come and stand in line. So you can get there before the show and find your seats and make your way and you don't have to worry about other people taking the better seats. So if you get there early, order your tickets early, you can get the best seats.
I'll go order my tickets right now.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The Salisbury Independent will be offering coverage of Rock and Roll Revival all throughout February. Thank you for joining us for One-on-One with Annabel Hofmann, filling in for Greg Bassett.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and One-on-One. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.
I forgot what I was going to say. It was going so well. Give me a second.
You're doing great.
Thanks. Wait, I actually had a really solid question. Oh, I got it. I'm back.
Okay.
Brain fart.
That's okay. Whatever, just look at him for a second before you start.
Okay. Gotcha. And what was the other one? What am I saying now? The Salisbury Independent will be covering Rock and Roll Revival throughout February. Thank you for joining us for One-on-One with Greg Bassett. Just kidding, wait. I forgot my name wasn't actually Greg Bassett. Wait, I'm going to just change the name. It's One-on-One with Annabel Hofmann now.
Annabel Hoffman's sitting in for Greg Bassett.
Okay, got it. Anyway. Okay. 1 second. Okay.